Begin by opening the image that you would like to be working with in order to place textures on top of your picture. And then once you have your image opened, go ahead and place on top of it the texture that you would like to apply to your image. So I'm going to go to File, Place Linked, and then I'm going to find where I have my texture saved. I'm going to open up the texture that I want to begin working with. Once I have my texture on top of it, you can begin to adjust or resize the texture. So for example, my crack here that I'm going to be working with is only covering part of the face that I want to overlay the texture. So in order to make this a little bit bigger, hold down Shift and stretch out the corner of your image. The reason why I'm holding down Shift while I'm stretching or resizing my image is so that it doesn't stretch out just one side of my picture, otherwise it might be too thin or too long. Once you have your image where you would like it or the size you would like it, go ahead and hit enter, and then it will place your image. In the layers panel over here on the bottom right of the screen, you can begin to select the overlay that you would like your texture to create. So instead of having the overlay set to normal, I can click the drop down arrow and choose a different setting. The setting that tends to work the best is multiply. When I click multiply, the background image is going to come through the texture so that you can start to see both of them on top of each other overlaid. Some of the other settings do create an interesting effect that might work well for your image, so I would play around and find one of the settings that you like the best and which one works the best for your image. If you wanted the texture to only overlay on top of the face or a specific area of your photo, begin by selecting around the outside of the face or your object. So I'm going to be using this magnetic lasso tool here. You could also use the quick selection tool, which works just as well, but I'll just use the magnetic lasso tool for this image. I'm going to hide my texture layer so that I'm able to quickly select around the outside of the face. So using my magnetic lasso tool, I'm just going to follow around the outside of the face here, making sure that it's picking up around the edge. And once you have the face selected, what you're going to be doing is adding a layer mask on top of your texture. So I'm going to bring my texture layer back into my image, and then I'm going to add a layer mask. When this layer mask is added, it deletes the background so that the texture is not on the sky or on the grass, it's just on the figure's face. The reason why you want to add a layer mask instead of just deleting the background so that the texture is not on the sky or the grass is so that in case you missed an area, for example, I did not get texture on my ear over here. So what I can do now, since I still have the layer mask, is making sure that I have white selected. I can use my paintbrush and paint the texture back onto the ear. And then maybe I wanted some extra texture in certain areas in the background. I can paint that in as well. Another setting that you might want to work with is the opacity setting. If you take your opacity down, it's going to make the texture a little bit more see-through. So you can play around with that, see what works the best for your specific image. An interesting effect that you might want to consider is adding a second texture on top of your image. If you wanted to add a second texture, you can just go to File, Place Linked, and find wherever you have your other texture saved at. So I'm going to open up this texture of a flower. And again, to resize the image, I'm going to make sure I'm holding down Shift and dragging from the corner. And when I'm happy with the size of my image, I'm going to hit enter and it will load my file on. Again, I'm going to play around with the setting. Instead of having it set to normal, I might choose multiply or screen, color dodge. There's a lot of different settings that you can work with. See what works the best for your image, what makes it look the most interesting. So play around with where you have your textures and what settings you have them set to. Play around with the opacity.